Number 1. St. Augustine, Florida. St. Augustine began in 1565 when Spanish ships reached the Florida coast and built a town that never truly went silent. Soldiers, sailors, priests, merchants, and families all passed through narrow streets. The old coquina walls, shaded courtyards, and sea air make the city feel like history is breathing right beside you after sunset. One of its most famous stories rises above the water at the St. Augustine Lighthouse. The present tower was completed in 1874, during a time when ships still depended on its light to survive the dark coast. But the place is remembered not only for storms and keepers, but for the playful spirits tied to the PT girls and the families who worked there. Visitors often say they hear young laughter echoing inside the tower, even when no children are near. Some report swings moving on calm days, small footsteps on the stairs, or shoelaces tied by hands no one can see. The stories are gentle, almost as if the girls are still turning the lighthouse into a game for anyone brave enough to climb. That is why St. Augustine feels different from many haunted places. Its legends are not only about fear, they are about centuries of lives, leaving soft marks behind. When the lantern room glows and the wind moves through the old streets, the city seems to whisper that the past is still walking beside the sea. Number 2. Estes Park, Colorado. Estes Park sits under the Rocky Mountains, where the air feels sharp, clean, and older than the roads. In 1903, Freeland Oscar Stanley came west for his health and found the high country helped him breathe again. A few years later, he and his wife Flora opened the Stanley Hotel in 1909, hoping guests would love the mountains too. With electric lights, telephones, and fine meals, it felt modern for its time. The hotel soon became a big summer retreat, with white walls shining against dark pine trees and Long's Peak rising beyond the windows. It later became famous because Stephen King stayed there and found inspiration for The Shining. But the real ghost stories at the Stanley are often softer than people expect, built more on music than screams. Flora Stanley is said to return to the ballroom she loved, where guests sometimes hear gentle piano music when no one is seated at the keys. Others notice the scent of roses in empty halls, or feel a careful presence pass by, like a host still checking that every room is ready. Even the footsteps seem polite, pausing near doors. That is the strange charm of Estes Park. The mountains can look huge and lonely, but the Stanley Hotel feels watched over, not abandoned. At night, when wind moves across the porch and music seems to rise from nowhere, the old hotel feels less like a horror story and more like a memory that never wanted to leave, high above town. Number 3. Savannah, Georgia. Savannah began in 1733, when James Oglethorpe and the first English settlers planned a city of shaded squares near the river. Over time, homes, churches, and markets grew around older burial grounds. Fires, epidemics, and war changed the city, but its grid stayed. That is why people often say Savannah was built upon its dead, with history resting just under the brick sidewalks. The beauty of the city makes the stories feel even stronger. Spanish moss hangs over lanes where carriages once rolled, and many inns were once private homes. The Kehoe House, built in 1892 for iron foundry owner William Kehoe, is known for gentle, childlike presences that seem to touch guests awake without malice, almost like a quiet goodnight. At the Marshall House, the past is heavier. Built in the 1850s, it served as a hospital during the Civil War and again during yellow fever outbreaks. Guests have reported footsteps in empty halls, faucets turning on by themselves, and the quiet figure of a one-armed Union soldier moving through the lobby like he still has duties to finish. Savannah's hauntings do not feel like one single tale. They feel like the whole city remembering at once war, sickness, childhood, wealth, and loss. When gas lamps glow against the old squares and the trees lean over the streets, Savannah seems to breathe out its story slowly, as if it knows every name beneath the stones. Number 4. Cape May, New Jersey. Cape May grew famous in the 1800s as one of America's earliest seaside escapes, where families arrived by steamboat, train, and carriage to breathe salt air. After a great fire in 1878, much of the town was rebuilt in bright Victorian style. That is why the streets still feel like a painted postcard from another century, with turrets and trim watching the shore. One of its most remembered homes is the Emlyn Physic Estate, finished in 1879. Its unusual stick-style design, linked to architect Frank Furness, stands out with sharp rooflines, patterned wood, and grand rooms made for a wealthy resort family. Inside, the house gives visitors a clear look at Cape May's elegant Gilded Age and summer rituals. The haunting here is not loud. People often speak of Aunt Emily Parmentier, a former resident whose presence feels watchful and kind. Some say they sense her moving through the rooms, while others believe Dr. Physic's beloved dogs still pad along the floors, staying close to the family they knew, as loyal in death as in life. Cape May's ghosts seem to match the town itself, graceful, quiet, and touched by the sea. When evening settles over the porches and the old houses glow under soft lights, the Physic Estate feels less like an empty mansion and more like a home that remembers every footstep, every visitor, and every breeze off the Atlantic, even after the last tour ends and porch lights fade. Number 5. Galena, Illinois. Galena rests in a steep valley near the Mississippi River, but in the 1800s, it was anything but sleepy. Lead mining made the town boom, and its brick storefronts filled with travelers, traders, and politicians. Ulysses S. Grant lived here before the Civil War, and the town still carries that proud, preserved feeling in its hills and stone stairways. At the center of its legends stands the DeSoto House Hotel, opened in 1855. It welcomed crowds during the Lincoln-Douglas debates and later hosted names that helped shape American history. But for generations, guests also spoke of a lady in black who came down the stairs, crossed the room, and vanished into a solid wall without a sound. The story sounded strange until repairs, after a 2011 flood, uncovered a sealed brick doorway where the figure had always disappeared. Suddenly, the ghostly route made a human kind of sense. Maybe she was not walking through a wall at all. Maybe she was simply using a door that existed in her memory, returning to a path the living had forgotten. Its ghosts do not feel invented. They feel hidden inside the old architecture. When evening settles over Main Street and the hotel windows shine above the quiet sidewalks, the lady in black seems less like a fright and more like a reminder that buildings remember what people erase, long after records fade and the old stairway stays silent. Number 6. Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Harper's Ferry sits where the Shenandoah and Potomac rivers meet, a small town pressed between water, cliffs, and American memory. In 1859, John Brown led his raid on the federal armory there, hoping to spark an uprising against slavery. Then the Civil War turned the town into a prize both armies wanted again and again. The hills watched it all. The hills saw all. With so much history packed into one narrow place, the ghost stories feel almost natural. The town is known for one of the longest-running ghost tours in the country, and its old streets past churches, stone steps, and houses that watched soldiers march through. At night, the rivers seem to carry voices from every century, low beneath the bridges. The most famous legend is Screaming Jenny, often described as a poor woman who lived near the railroad tracks in the 1800s. In the story, her dress caught fire one cold evening, and she ran in panic toward an oncoming train. Now people say a small ball of fire appears near the rails on the anniversary of her death, drifting like a warning lamp. When fog gathers over the river and the tracks vanish into darkness, the town feels like a place where history never fully crossed over. It waits by the water, glowing faintly, as if still trying to be seen. The old tracks still seem to glow. Number 7. Anoka, Minnesota. Anoka, Minnesota calls itself the Halloween capital of the world, but that title began with a very practical idea. In 1920, local leaders organized a Halloween parade to give children a fun reason to celebrate instead of pulling pranks around town. The plan worked, and Anoka turned one October night into a tradition the whole community could share. Since then, Halloween has become part of the town's identity. Parades, costumes, contests, and decorated storefronts fill the streets each fall, making Anoka feel playful instead of frightening. But under that friendly celebration, older buildings and quiet corners have gathered a softer kind of haunted reputation over the years, whispered after dark. Downtown shopkeepers and visitors sometimes tell of rocking chairs moving when no one is sitting in them, small objects shifting places, and window displays looking different in the morning than they did the night before. These are not wild, angry hauntings. They feel more like mischievous spirits, enjoying the town's favorite season. It stays playful. It does not need a ruined mansion or a battlefield to feel haunted. Its ghosts seem stitched into the parade banners, old brick storefronts, and chilly October air. When the streetlights glow through costume masks and falling leaves, the whole town feels like Halloween remembered how to breathe. It keeps smiling. Number 8. Corning, New York. Corning, New York, built much of its identity around glass, fire, and careful hands. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, the town was tied to American glassmaking and the bright promise of invention. Its factories, workshops, and museums kept alive the story of people who shaped heat and sand into something clear enough to hold light for a nation. Every October, Corning celebrates that history with the Days of Incandescence, a festival inspired by the age of early electric lamps and Victorian wonder. Instead of leaning on harsh scares, the town fills its streets with a soft glow, costumed figures, and windows that shine like they belong to another century. The mood is calm, curious, and old-fashioned. The haunted feeling here is gentle and artistic. People speak of quiet historical spirits moving near the lantern-lit walkways, not as monsters, but as echoes of workers, inventors, and townspeople who once watched modern light change the world. In Corning, even the ghosts seem to move carefully, as if made of glass, passing only when the lamps are low. Its mystery does not jump out from the dark, it glimmers. When old-style lamps shine along the streets and reflections ripple in shop windows, the past seems close enough to touch. For one brief season, the town feels lit from inside by memory itself. Number 9. San Diego, California. Old Town. San Diego holds the early story of California, with adobe walls, dusty plazas, and the feeling of a frontier settlement beside the Pacific. In 1857, Thomas Whaley built a brick house there that became a family home, store, courthouse, and theater. It was proud and useful, but it also stood on troubling ground where justice once felt harsh. Before the Whaley house rose, the site had been used for a public hanging. Soon after moving in, the family reported heavy footsteps that did not belong to anyone living. The house later saw grief, legal trouble, business, and performance all under one roof, giving every room a layered past that visitors still feel when the doors close. Even the air feels close. Today, guests speak of cigar smoke, music, footsteps, and figures that appear in doorways before fading. Some mention the spirit of a young woman near the parlor organ, while others notice a greenish orb drifting where the air should be still. The stories feel personal, as if the house remembers both public drama and private sorrow. That detail feels old. It is not only a haunted stop in San Diego, it is a record of a young city becoming real. When the rooms grow quiet and the wooden floors seem to answer with one more step, Old Town feels less like a museum and more like a doorway left open between California's past and the present. Number 10. Atchison, Kansas. Atchison, Kansas, grew beside the Missouri River as a busy 19th century gateway to the West. Steamboats, railroads, merchants, and travelers helped shape the town, and its brick streets still carry that old frontier energy. It is also the birthplace of Amelia Earhart, but Atchison has another reputation, a town that welcomes its ghosts with pride. The McIntyre Villa built in 1889 for businessman John McIntyre, stands as one of its best-known haunted landmarks. With tall windows, heavy woodwork, and a tower that watches the street, the house looks like it was made to collect secrets. Over time, families, servants, and visitors all left pieces of life inside its rooms. Even the tower seems awake. One gentle spirit is often called Goldie, remembered as a former servant who seems to keep near her favorite chair. People have reported lights turning on and off in the tower, even though stories say that area has no electricity. Others describe soft movements, quiet footsteps, and the feeling of someone nearby but not threatening. The chair is part of the tale. Atchison's ghost stories fit the town's river history. Travelers come, stay a while, and leave something behind. On a still evening, when the villa's windows darken and the old streets settle, the place feels watched, but not in anger. It feels like the past is sitting in the next room, rocking slowly, waiting for someone to listen. It listens. Number 11. Alton, Illinois. Alton, Illinois grew beside the Mississippi River, where steamboats, mills, limestone bluffs, and river trade shaped the town's old identity. By the early 1900s, people also came looking for health and comfort. In 1914, the Mineral Springs Hotel opened after builders struck a natural spring instead of simply finishing an ice warehouse. The new hotel became a place of warm baths, bright rooms, and one of the largest indoor swimming pools in Illinois. Guests arrived hoping the mineral water would ease pain and bring rest. But as the decades passed and the pool went dry, stories gathered in the quiet halls, especially around a child spirit known to many as Cassie, who lingered near the tiled room. Cassie is said to be gentle, not frightening. Local lore says she once visited her grandmother at the hotel and loved the pool area more than anywhere else. Today, visitors sometimes leave marbles near the old drain. Some claim the marbles roll across the floor on their own, as if a child is still playing a careful little game in the echoing room. The Mineral Springs Hotel is not remembered only for grand rooms or old water cures, but for the feeling of a happy moment that refused to vanish. When the building grows still, the old dry pool seems to wait for laughter, and one small marble may move again, rolling softly across the floor in the hush. Number 12. Jefferson, Texas. Jefferson, Texas was once one of the busiest river towns in the state. In the mid-1800s, steamboats moved along Big Cypress Bayou, carrying cotton, goods, news, and travelers toward places as far away as New Orleans. Before the railroad changed everything, Jefferson felt like a doorway between East Texas and the wider world, alive with bells and river fog. The Excelsior House Hotel, built in the 1850s, still carries that riverport memory. It is known as one of the oldest operating hotels in East Texas, and its guest list has become part of its legend. Travelers, politicians, merchants, and famous visitors pass through its rooms, leaving behind the sense that the building heard more stories than it ever told. Among the gentlest tales is The Vanishing Maid. People say she appears in a long dress, carrying fresh linens as if a room still needs her care. She glides past doorways, quiet and focused, then fades before anyone can speak. There is no scream, no chase, only a working woman repeating a task from another century in the dim hall. The town rose because people came and went by water, and the hotel was built to welcome them. At night, when the halls settle and the bayou lies dark beyond the streets, the Excelsior House feels as if it is still waiting for one more guest to arrive, while the old stairway listens in silence. Number 13. Bisbee, Arizona. Bisbee, Arizona began as a hard copper camp in the Mule Mountains, where miners carved wealth from steep, rocky ground. By the early 1900s, the town had grown from a rough settlement into a busy community with hotels, theaters, saloons, and winding streets. The Copper Queen Hotel opened in 1902 to welcome mine owners, investors, travelers, and important guests who came to see the success of the copper boom. Its tall building, old woodwork, and long corridors still look like a piece of the mining age. But behind the elegant rooms, Bisbee's ghost stories have become almost as famous as its ore. One spirit is known as the bearded gentleman, often described in old-fashioned clothing, sometimes with a cape and top hat. Guests have reported the scent of cigar smoke in places where no cigar is burning. Another spirit, a child called Billy, is said to hide small objects or touch guests' feet in a playful, harmless way before vanishing. Its hauntings feel shaped by the town itself, rough, strange, and full of character. When evening falls over the mountains and the hotel lights glow against the dark streets, the Copper Queen seems less like an empty landmark and more like an old mining camp still awake, whispering through smoke, footsteps, and laughter from the copper years, deep into the quiet desert night, barely heard. Number 14. Jerome, Arizona. Jerome, Arizona clings to Cleopatra Hill above the Verde Valley, a town built on copper, danger, and impossible views. In the early 1900s, its mines helped make fortunes, but fires, accidents, and hard work also marked daily life. After the boom faded, Jerome nearly became a ghost town before artists and visitors helped bring it back. High above town stands the Jerome Grand Hotel, built in 1926 as a modern hospital for the United Verde mining community. It was designed to survive shifting ground and nearby blasting, with strong concrete walls and a view over the valley. In a place where many lives began, ended, or changed, it is easy to understand why stories stayed. One of the most unusual legends is not a person, but a spirit cat. Guests have heard meowing outside doors, felt a soft shape brush against their legs, or noticed a small curled imprint on the bedding. The tale is gentle, almost comforting, as if the animal still patrols the rooms, looking for warmth and company in the night. Its haunted history is not only about fear in old hospital halls, it is about the small signs that a place remembers life. When the wind moves over Cleopatra Hill and the hotel windows reflect the last light, Jerome feels like a town that survived by keeping both its people and its ghosts close, high above the valley, where the old mine winds still pass softly. Number 15. Wilmington, North Carolina. Wilmington, North Carolina grew as a colonial seaport where ships, trade, and river wines shaped the city's early life. Its streets still carry the look of old southern homes, brick buildings, and live oaks near the Cape Fear River. By the 1800s, Wilmington had become a place of business, politics, and culture along the coast. One of its proudest landmarks is Thalian Hall, built in 1858 as a theater and civic center. For generations, people gathered there for plays, concerts, speeches, and public events. The building survived war, change, and time, keeping its stage alive while the city around it moved from the antebellum period into the modern age. The ghosts of Thalian Hall seem to love performance as much as the living do. Workers and visitors have told stories of props disappearing and returning, strange sounds behind the stage, and figures in old-fashioned clothing watching from the balconies. Some spirits seem less like intruders and more like actors who never heard the final curtain call. Thalian Hall is not just an old theater. It is a room full of voices layered across more than a century. When the lights dim and the seats go quiet, it feels as if the building is still expecting applause from someone unseen, waiting in the balcony after the last song fades, while the old river town listens in the dark tonight, wide awake. Number 16. Salem, Massachusetts. Salem, Massachusetts, carries one of the most serious chapters in early American history. In 1692, fear spread through the Puritan town when accusations of witchcraft turned neighbors against neighbors. Before the trials ended, more than 200 people had been accused and 20 were executed. That real tragedy still shapes every shadow in Salem to this day. But Salem is not only remembered for the trials. Its old streets also hold colonial homes, merchant houses, and quiet gardens from the centuries that followed. One of the most graceful places is the Ropes Mansion, built in the 1700s and later connected to the long story of New England wealth, family life, and public memory in a changing seaport. The spirit most often tied to the house is Abigail Ropes, who lived there in the 18th century. Visitors have spoken of flickering lights, soft movement in empty rooms, and a calm presence near the gardens. Unlike the darker legends surrounding the trials, this haunting feels peaceful, as if a former resident is still caring for the home and its flowers. That is what makes Salem so powerful. Its history is not a costume or a simple scare. It is a reminder of how fear can change a town forever. Yet in the same place, quiet spirits and old houses show another side of the city. When evening settles over Salem, the past feels close, serious, and still awake beyond the lamps and the old window glass. Number 17. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania is marked by 3 terrible days in July 1863, when Union and Confederate armies fought one of the largest battles of the Civil War. More than 50,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, captured, or missing. The town became a hospital, a camp, and a burial ground, all at once, while ordinary families watched history break around them. Beyond the famous fields, places like the Cashtown Inn carry their own memory. The inn stood along a route used by Confederate forces before the battle, and afterward, many buildings in the region served the wounded. Rooms that once welcomed travelers became spaces of pain, waiting, and whispered prayers as wagons rolled outside and bells rang nearby. Visitors have reported ghostly sentries, bootsteps in empty halls, and the faint smell of peppermint or vanilla, scents women sometimes used in the 1800s to cover the harsh smells of sickness and war. Those details make the haunting feel strangely human. It is not only soldiers returning, but the whole town remembering survival in silence, year after year. Monuments stand in daylight, but at dusk, the fields grow quiet in a different way. The wind moves over fences and stone walls, and it is easy to imagine men still keeping watch. Gettysburg does not need to shout its ghosts. Its history already speaks enough to chill the air even today. Number 18. Long Beach, California. Long Beach, California keeps one of the most famous haunted places in America floating in its harbor. The RMS Queen Mary was launched in 1934, entered service in 1936, and became a proud ocean liner carrying wealthy travelers across the Atlantic in Art Deco luxury. During World War II, she was painted gray and used as a troop ship, earning the nickname the Gray Ghost. After decades at sea, the Queen Mary made her final voyage to Long Beach in 1967. There she became a hotel and museum, her salons, staterooms, engine rooms, and pool area preserved like a city inside a big ship in polished detail. But a vessel that carried so many people through peace, war, joy, and danger was bound to gather stories over time. One of the gentlest legends is Jackie, a playful child spirit often linked to the old first-class swimming pool. Visitors and investigators have reported giggles, splashing sounds, and a small voice echoing where no child is visible after dark. In the grand old pool room, even silence seems to ripple, as if someone has just stepped into the water. That is why the Queen Mary feels alive in a way few landmarks do. She is not a ruin. She is a ship that stopped sailing, but never fully stopped moving. At night, with Long Beach lights beyond the portholes, the old liner seems to breathe in the harbor, carrying every crossing, every farewell, and every laugh still trapped inside her steel walls. Number 19. Mackinac Island, Michigan. Mackinac Island, Michigan feels preserved by design. Cars are still banned, horses still pull carriages, and the streets look back toward the 1800s, but the island's history reaches even deeper still. Long before tourists arrived, native people, fur traders, British troops, and American soldiers all moved through this important point between Lakes Huron and Michigan. Fort Mackinac was founded by the British in the late 1700s and later became an American military post. Its stone buildings, barracks, and parade ground still stand above the harbor. Visitors sometimes tell of uniformed figures crossing rooms, unseen boots on wooden floors, or objects shifting as if old routines continue after the bugle has gone quiet. The island's haunted side is not limited to the fort. The Mission Church, built in the 1820s and one of Michigan's oldest surviving churches, is known in local lore for phantom organ music. People have described hearing soft organ notes inside when the building is empty, as if an unseen musician is playing for a congregation that left long ago. That is what gives Mackinac Island its strange magic. It does not feel abandoned. It feels carefully kept by both the living and the dead. When evening fog rolls in from the lake and carriage wheels fade down the road, the island seems to slip backward in time, holding soldiers, settlers, hymns, and memories just beneath the sound of the water. Number 20. McMinnville, Oregon. McMinnville, Oregon, sits in the heart of the Willamette Valley, surrounded by old farms, vineyards, and soft Pacific Northwest rain. Its downtown still carries a historic charm, with brick buildings, old signs, and streets that feel calm after sunset. The town is better known for wine country and small-town beauty, but it also keeps a quiet, haunted reputation. One of its best-known ghostly stops is McMenamin's Hotel, Oregon, a building tied to the early 20th century life of the town when travelers filled its streets. Like many old hotels, it has seen travelers, workers, celebrations, lonely nights, and changing owners. Over time, those layers of daily life turned into stories that visitors still repeat in lowered voices. Local lore speaks of a woman in vintage clothing who appears on the upper floors. Some believe she may have been a housekeeper connected to the building's earlier years. Guests have reported strange footsteps, doors behaving oddly, and the faint sound of piano music drifting through the night, playing when no performer can be found there. McMinnville's haunting is gentle, almost musical. It does not feel like a warning, but like a memory moving through an old hotel after everyone else has gone to sleep. When rain taps the windows and downtown grows still, the notes seem to hang in the hallway, reminding visitors that some songs do not end just because the player has disappeared. Number 21. San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio, Texas is a city where history stands in the open. Spanish missions, old plazas, and the San Antonio River all carry stories from long before Texas became a state. The Alamo, first built as Mission San Antonio de Valero in the 1700s, became famous after the 1836 battle when defenders died during the Texas Revolution. A few steps from that history stands the Menger Hotel, opened in 1859 by William and Mary Menger beside their brewery. Over time, it welcomed soldiers, cattlemen, presidents, and travelers. In 1898, Theodore Roosevelt recruited men for the Rough Riders in the hotel bar, giving the building one of its most memorable chapters. Guests and staff have long told stories of Roosevelt's friendly spirit still appearing near the bar, dressed as if he has returned for one more conversation. Others speak of footsteps at the Alamo after closing, or shadowy figures moving near the old mission walls, as if the men of 1836 still keep a quiet watch over the grounds. Its ghosts seem tied to duty, memory, and places that changed American history. When the Riverwalk grows calm and the Alamo stones cool under the night air, the city feels like it is still listening to old boots, old voices, and a past that never fully left. Even when the streets appear peaceful, the old city seems awake beneath the lanterns. Number 22, Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston, South Carolina began in 1670 and grew into one of the most important ports in the American South. Its cobblestone lanes, church steeples, iron gates, and pastel houses hold centuries of trade, war, storms, and rebuilding. Even in daylight, the city feels old enough to remember every carriage wheel that passed. One of its best-known haunted landmarks is the Dock Street Theater. The first theater on that site opened in 1736, making it part of America's early stage history. The building changed over time, but the place kept its theatrical spirit. Local stories often speak of a heartbroken actress who appears near the balcony before performances begin. Charleston's ghosts are also heard along the Battery, where grand homes face the harbor and cannons once guarded the city. Visitors have reported the sound of phantom hoofbeats, soft marching, and the presence of soldiers from older conflicts. These stories feel less like shocks and more like history walking its usual route after dark. The city does not feel haunted by one ghost, but by many layers of memory: colonial streets, Civil War echoes, theater lights, and sea wind. When lanterns glow on old brick and the harbor turns black, Charleston feels like a proud city still keeping company with those who helped shape it. The past does not shout there. It steps gently over old stones at night. Number 23, San Francisco, California. San Francisco, California grew fast after the 1849 gold rush, when ships, miners, merchants, and dreamers crowded into a city of fog and steep hills. Wealth rose quickly, but so did fires, crime, and loss. By the late 1800s, elegant Victorian homes stood beside streets that had changed almost overnight, making the city feel beautiful and restless. One of its gentler haunted places is the Queen Anne Hotel, built in the 1890s as a girls' finishing school called the Mary Lake School for Girls. Miss Mary Lake served as its headmistress, guiding young students in a city that was still trying to become polished, proper, and permanent after the rush of its early years. Guests say Miss Mary Lake never fully left. Her spirit is believed to watch over the hotel with kindness, especially near room 410. Visitors have reported blankets tucked around them, luggage unpacked, and a calm feeling in the halls. Unlike many ghost stories, hers feels less like a haunting and more like good manners surviving death. That is why San Francisco's ghostly side can feel surprisingly warm. Beneath the fog, cable bells, and painted houses, the city keeps memories of people who built small places of order in a wild boomtown. At night, when the Queen Anne's windows glow softly, it feels as if Miss Lake is still making sure every guest is safe and settled. The old school seems quiet, but not empty, as the fog gathers outside. Number 24, Boston, Massachusetts. Boston, Massachusetts is one of America's oldest cities, founded in 1630 and shaped by revolution, trade, faith, and argument. Its narrow streets lead past burying grounds, meeting halls, taverns, and brick buildings where people once debated the future of a new country. In Boston, history does not feel far away. It feels underfoot. Places like Faneuil Hall, first opened in 1742, and the old burial grounds along the Freedom Trail remind visitors how many lives passed through the city before the United States existed. The Omni Parker House, opened in 1855, adds another layer, with stories of writers, politicians, and travelers filling its rooms across generations. Boston's ghosts are often described as thoughtful rather than frightening. People speak of figures in old clothing near historic streets, strange sounds in hotels, and the sense of someone nearby inside rooms that should be empty. These tales feel connected to a city where the dead are buried close to the living and where every corner has a name. That is why Boston feels haunted in a deeply American way. Its spirits seem less like strangers and more like citizens who never stopped walking the same routes. When evening settles over the common and the old stones turn gray, the city feels as if it is still holding a quiet meeting with the past, waiting for one more voice to rise. Here, even silence can sound like history. Number 25. Galveston, Texas. Galveston, Texas, rose on a barrier island that once made it one of the richest and busiest ports in the state. By the late 1800s, its banks, theaters, mansions, and hotels gave it a proud nickname, the Queen City of the Gulf. Then, on September 8, 1900, a great hurricane struck and changed Galveston forever. The storm killed thousands and became one of the deadliest natural disasters in American history. Afterward, the city razed parts of the island and built a seawall to protect itself from future storms. That mix of tragedy and determination shaped Galveston's identity, making its ghost stories feel tied to survival as much as sorrow. The Grand Galvez Hotel, opened in 1911, became a symbol of that recovery and seaside elegance. With its grand halls and view of the Gulf, it welcomed travelers back to a city rebuilding its confidence. Guests have reported playful, ghostly activity, including stories of a childlike spirit bouncing a toy ball through the upper corridors after dark. The island remembers loss, but it also remembers music, vacations, salt air, and families returning to the shore. When waves roll beyond the seawall and hotel lights shine across the night, Galveston feels like a city that refused to disappear, carrying its ghosts with grace. The old island still sounds like waves, laughter, and memory. Number 26. Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. became the nation's capital in 1790, chosen as a planned city between North and South. From the beginning, it carried the weight of big decisions. War, protest, celebration, and grief all passed through its streets. Marble buildings may look calm in daylight, but after dark, they seem full of unfinished conversations and footsteps. The White House, first occupied in 1800, is the center of many of the city's ghost stories. The most famous belongs to Abraham Lincoln, who led the country through the Civil War and was assassinated in 1865. Over the years, guests, staff, and even leaders have claimed to sense him near the rooms he once knew, thoughtful and silent, still working there too. The Capitol has its own strange legend, a phantom black cat that appears before national trouble signs. Some stories say guards saw it grow large before vanishing in a flash. Whether it began as a real animal in old basement corridors or a warning tale passed among workers, the idea fits a city where every hallway seems to carry pressure, rumor, and old worry. Its spirits are not only tied to houses, but to the burden of the country itself. When the avenues empty and the monuments glow white against the night, the Capitol feels like a place where history still walks, watching the living decide what comes next with quiet, serious eyes. Number 27, New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans, Louisiana was founded by the French in 1718 and later shaped by Spanish rule, Caribbean influence, Creole culture, Catholic tradition, and the Mississippi River. Its streets were built for trade, music, faith, and celebration. Few American cities carry so many layers at once, and that is why its ghost stories feel almost natural after dark. The French Quarter still holds balconies, courtyards, old hotels, and narrow lanes where the past seems close. Fires, epidemics, hurricanes, and hard years changed the city, but music always came back. Locals tell of brass notes drifting from empty rooms, ballroom dancers seen where no party is scheduled, and footsteps moving above sleeping guests. Some legends are darker, but the soul of New Orleans is not only fear, it is movement. A ghost here may feel like a musician refusing to end a song, or a dancer still turning beneath a chandelier. The city's spiritual traditions also remind visitors that the boundary between the living and the dead can feel thinner here than elsewhere at night too. That is what makes New Orleans unforgettable. Its hauntings do not sit quietly in corners. They join the rhythm of the city. When jazz spills into the street and the French Quarter glows after rain, it can feel as if generations are walking together, the living and the dead sharing one long parade that never fully ends. Number 28, Conway, South Carolina. Conway, South Carolina, rests near the Waccamaw River, under live oaks that seem older than memory. The town's roots go back to the colonial period, and it later grew through river trade, timber, and small-town life. Its historic district still feels quiet and close, with old homes, shaded porches, streets, and moss hanging like soft curtains over the road. Unlike louder haunted towns, Conway's stories are often gentle. Along the Riverwalk, people speak of faint figures near the trees, quiet footsteps on empty paths, and the feeling of being watched from the edge of the water. Some tales imagine old riverboat captains or early settlers lingering near the place that once carried their work and dreams downstream. The Waccamaw gives the legends their mood. Rivers keep moving slowly, but they also remember. They carry boats, names, storms, and family stories from one generation to the next. In Conway, a shape in the mist may be nothing more than a branch, yet the setting makes it easy to believe someone from long ago has paused to wave from the bank. The town's mystery rises slowly, like fog from the river. When evening falls and the oaks bend over the walkways, Conway seems to hold its history softly, as if the past is not gone at all, only standing quietly just beyond the trees, waiting in the amber river light. Number 29, St. Francisville, Louisiana. St. Francisville, Louisiana, sits on high ground above the Mississippi River, in a region shaped by plantations, river roads, and deep southern memory. The town grew through the 1800s as travelers, planters, workers, and families passed along the road between Louisiana's river communities. Its beauty carries history, and history here is never simple. The best-known haunted landmark is the Myrtles Plantation, whose main house dates to 1796. Over time, the home became surrounded by famous legends, some repeated so often that fact and folklore became difficult to separate. What remains clear is that visitors are drawn to the house because it feels full of stories, from the verandas to the old rooms. Many reported encounters are surprisingly soft. People speak of children seen near the windows, small footsteps moving through halls, and a piano playing when no one is seated there. These stories are less about terror than presence, as if moments from family life, music, and childhood have somehow stayed behind inside the walls and under the floorboards. Its haunted feeling is tied to the complicated history of the river south, where beauty and sorrow often stand side by side. When the evening insects begin and the myrtles grows quiet, the house seems to listen there, holding its legends carefully beneath the long Louisiana night, soft and deep. Number 30, San Jose, California. San Jose, California is now known as part of Silicon Valley, but long before modern technology filled the valley, the area was orchards, farms, and quiet roads. In 1884, Sarah Winchester, heir to the Winchester rifle fortune, moved west and began expanding a farmhouse into one of the strangest, most puzzling homes in America, room by room. The Winchester Mystery House grew for decades, with rooms, halls, stairs, doors, and windows added in confusing patterns. Stories say Sarah was told by a medium to keep building to calm restless spirits. Whether that tale is fully true or not, the result was real. A vast mansion with stairways to ceilings, doors to blank walls, and passages that seem to fold back on themselves. Visitors today often come for the architecture as much as the ghost stories. Some report footsteps, cold spots, or the sense of someone moving through the maze just out of sight. The house feels unusual because it was built from grief, wealth, fear, and imagination all at once, turning private worry into wood, glass, and endless hallways no map can quiet.
If you enjoy this video, please click the like button.
And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
See you in the next one.